Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Games Unlocked, and Brett and I are doing our final discussion over Sleeping Gods Distant Skies. We don't have anything set up because this is actually a week later since we had finished the initial campaign. So, like all campaign games that I do on the channel, we'll have two discussions. The second one usually is hopefully done after the campaign's over, which means that we finished it. If it
for better or worse,
yeah. Usually, if we finish it, that's because we liked it. Otherwise,
we died.
We didn't like it, and we're like, you know what? I'm done. Which happens, no, actually not that often.
Right.
So, Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies is a sequel to the first one. What do you think overall after the campaign is over?
Overall, the actual playing of it, the actual learning of it, I enjoyed slightly more.
Okay.
Very, very, very similar, so it wasn't a big learning curve.
Right.
But I like the little tweaks that they made. I remember that. The ending, to me, and I don't think it's a flaw in the game or the design. I think it's our mentality going through it.
Mm-hmm.
The ending was just a little bit disappointing.
Right.
Because it felt like the end of a game rather than the end of an exploration.
Right.
The end of an adventure.
Yeah, no, that's actually kind of right where I'm at as well. I think overall Distant Skies, I agree, is better than the original in terms of mechanisms. Because, like, they just did away with all, like, the fiddliness of making all players feel equally useful throughout the entire game.
Yeah.
But narrative-wise, there's two distinct things that I noticed between these two. And I think it had to come with possible complaints from the first one, in that the first one, which is why I really liked it, was it might have been too open. You didn't really know what you were doing until the game was over. And then the game was over, and then you had your ending.
Yeah.
And that's completely flipped on its head from this one, where you know exactly what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it's, hey...
You have to discover the end point.
Right.
But you know exactly what you're trying to accomplish.
Exactly. It's, hey, here are these totems. Revive them.
Yeah. Get 5.
Get 5 totems, and then you can end the game. Now, we happened to come across where we needed to go randomly. So then once we got 5, it's like, okay, well then I don't see a point in, not ending it. They told us to get 5. We're going to go get 5.
Yeah.
And here we go. We go towards the end. And then, I mean, I guess slight spoilers, but then you basically do this massive boss fight that felt just so trivial.
Yeah.
Because we also, and that could have been just circumstance, we happened to come across a place that gave us these powerful items, resources that were just like, can we just spend these?
Yeah.
Okay, 8 damage, 8 damage.
Well, we saved them earlier because we didn't realize that we could use them.
That's true. We did forget that you could spend, higher level ones for lower level ones to get more totems.
Yeah. But we did collect a bunch all of a sudden.
Yes.
And then race to the end, and that just made the end a lot easier.
Exactly. So, and I think it reminds me of, so I know you don't play a lot of video games, but CD Projekt Red, who made The Witcher 3, also made Cyberpunk 2077, which was a disaster upon launch. But they specifically said that most people didn't finish The Witcher 3 main story because it was too long, so they specifically designed Cyberpunk to have a shorter main story so people could finish it.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it feels with this one, that maybe most people weren't finishing the original Sleeping Gods because it was too long. You had no way to speed up the ending. You had no way to control when your campaign was over.
True.
So that upon designing this one, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to make sure that people can finish it so they can do more campaigns.
That makes sense.
Because to this day, I still haven't done a second full campaign of Sleeping Gods. I know you've done, 3? 2?
2.
Okay.
But they were at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't since then.
Yeah. So, maybe that's why. And I don't know. I definitely see that as like a I think more people are going to like that versus just another campaign game that takes too long.
Especially game players versus role players.
Yeah.
Because there's an end.
Mm-hmm.
But there's enough exploration, and there's a lot of rich story, and it's a very rich world that he's building and continues to build throughout, I guess, all of his games.
Yeah, they're all in the same world. None of the games connect to each other. It says, hey, this is all in the same universe.
Yeah. But that's amazing. I mean, it's really literary.
Yes.
For a mechanical game.
No, exactly. And even if I'm slightly disappointed with the way our game ended, the other way to look at it is like, oh, well, then we'll just play again. Yeah. Because there's so much we didn't explore. Like, we got... I mean, if you look at, like, the achievement thing, it's like we got 5 totems out of 30. We only saved 1 passenger. We got 1 ending out of 6.
Right.
We defeated 3 bosses out of 14.
Oh yeah, there's definitely more.
Like, there's so much to go out and do that you actually can look at the achievement sheet and be like, okay, well, now how do we get these other endings?
Yeah.
Because it's like, clearly not the 5 totems again, because there was no condition that was like, oh, yada, yada, yada. How many totems do you have? It was just like, oh, you got 5, cool, here's the ending. So it's like, how do we go about getting these other ones? And because it was so short... You can go do that. I mean, we had, 10 episodes of about an hour each, so still 10 hours of gameplay. And if you apply 10 hours to each ending, that's 60 hours out of a box. You know, just if we're just taking the one campaign and just applying it to all endings.
Well, I don't suspect that there are 6 successful endings. I suspect that there are 4 failure endings and maybe 2 successful ones.
And
because at the end we got to a successful ending,
right?
And it seems like it's really just amassing points. If you're going to succeed, it's no matter how many points can you get before your camping runs out.
Do you think that there's anything that the original Sleeping Gods did better than?
It has been a while. So that was the other thing that occurred to me is, to an extent, it suffers a little bit from the sequel syndrome.
Sure.
That, once something is done amazing and revolutionary and so different and radical and spot on, that something else that redoes it is never quite as good.
Yeah.
Very few sequels are as good as their originals.
You don't have that wow factor of, the first time stepping in and exploring. It's just like... Jumping into this one, it's like, oh, I've been here before. Yeah, it's a different setting, different time, but it's like, I've been here before.
Yeah.
And they don't. It doesn't seem to be the same. It is the same world, but they don't seem connected.
Right, different time frame.
Yeah. So. Which, I mean, I think is smart, actually, because if he made them connect, then he has to kind of keep making them connect, making them different. He can make a third Sleeping Gods and just do it further on, where it's like, hey, now it's Sleeping Gods, but it's modernized. It's today's time, and then Sleeping Gods in the future. He allowed himself to be able to not be like, well, it's tied to the first one, so I'm still stuck in this very limited time frame.
Yeah, they are definitely standalone. And I was actually thinking, if someone was thinking about buying one of them, because they hadn't had either, which one would I recommend? I would have to say Distant Skies.
I think so too.
But I would not say if you already have the original that you really need to have Distant Skies, because it's so radically different that you're going to have a whole different experience playing it.
Yeah.
I just think they have slightly different appeals, and it's a matter of understanding which one. But in general, Distant Skies is...
It's easier to jump into, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just more streamlined. It's cleaner. Like the fact that combat is still the same, still a puzzle, but now it's based off of cards. You have a deck of cards that's shared between all players.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they're called, but basically the item cards that everyone gets, that's shared instead of being just a pool of just being there that you had to use tokens to activate. Right. And almost having a meta of being like, well, we need to get this item because that allows us to reuse things. It's like there's none of that. It's just, hey, these are what's in my hand. I'm going to use them. I almost felt like I was slightly disappointed because this one felt easier.
The combat?
just
Or the
everything.
living
Everything that, like, we were, like, there was, like, I mean, combat for sure, like, it just felt like we were always doing it wrong because it was just so easy.
The first couple were, we barely scraped through.
Correct.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because I remember it was the same with the Sleeping Gods.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got easier as we got better items and we got figured out how to use them better.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is, like, nothing ever scaled. Like, because they kind of removed the challenge rating, which is what the original one had, where it's like, hey, by the way, here's the level. This is kind of the rating of where these monsters are at.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, let's just fight it. And I mean, I like the fact that they have bosses. That's cool.
Yeah.
But the boss thing is also kind of weird because they're sectioned off, so you just kind of beat certain locations and you're not...
Yeah.
I don't know.
It plays the same, except that you can't randomize how they
Right.
get laid out.
Yeah.
They're laid out specifically and designed that way.
Yeah, and I don't know, I like that extra puzzle of kind of looking at what you were fighting and meticulously deciding which section you want to get rid of the most, because what was the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
And this one just felt like it started that way, but then by the end it was like, it doesn't matter. Like, we're going to do this.
Or it was too easy to solve the puzzle to figure out how to optimize
Right.
combat.
And maybe that's just because we've played the original Sleeping Gods and we know how combat works and we know how to solve that puzzle.
That could be part of it. Again, the sequel syndrome.
Yeah.
Been there, slightly different, but it's not.
Yeah, they basically made it to where it's like, I mean, in the original, all enemies, like, attacked at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one, it's like, they don't attack at the end, they just retaliate when you attack.
Mm-hmm.
And
they get stronger each round.
Right.
In their retaliations.
Exactly. But I also think that they...
Well, actually, they do have end of round effects.
Yeah.
But we were really good at eliminating those.
Correct. Yeah.
So I don't think we ever hit any of them.
Not really, just because it's like, well, we can remove their power-up cubes, we can take the damage, and we got rid of their end-of-round effects, so they're not doing
Or
anything.
we wiped them out first round, so they didn't have any end of round.
Exactly. So I don't know. I think combat, maybe, again, it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction where it was too hard in Sleeping Gods, that it's like, well, I'm going to overcompensate, now it's too easy. And to be fair, I mean, I'm sure there's a way to make the game harder in...
The only one I remember is just the duration of the overall game by number of camps.
So, there is a difficulty.
Oh.
Yeah, when you're playing hard mode, all challenges have +1 to the challenge number.
Oh.
There are 14 removed level 1 event cards.
Oh.
And each combat, you shuffle the enemy buff cards and deal 1 to each enemy. So they have an effect, like an overall buff effect
Gotcha.
to them. And it also adds health and an ability to the enemy.
Okay.
So there's that. But this also did have something that the original didn't, which I think is really cool and adds to even more exploration, and it's the travel. Like the fact that you actually have a plane to manage resources, which you didn't... I mean, you had the health of the ship in the first one, and you have the health of the plane, but it's not like individual sections of the plane you have to heal. It's just the plane's overall health.
Yeah.
But you had ways to fast travel.
Yeah.
You just go to the plane, and it's like, okay, where do we want to go? Plane might take damage. So, but I thought that was very handy if you just wanted to get somewhere quick. And it also included, discovered lands that we never went to.
Okay.
We found one, and it was like that dude's hometown. I don't remember his name, but he's like, yo, this is where I'm from. And we could have went there, but it's like, 5 totems, let's leave.
Yep.
But there's a ton of those that you can find.
Yeah, do you remember how many quests we had unfinished?
Oh, God, no.
3 or 4 at least.
Like, that we discovered?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought you were talking about overall. I'm like,
No, we had a whole bunch of cards.
Yeah.
But most of them were just keywords that unlock other
Yeah.
features. But we had like 3 or 4 things that were telling us to go somewhere, and we just didn't bother.
Right. So, I mean, that didn't change.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, because it's going to be like different strokes for different folks with, because it's like in the original, I actually, while there were 8 characters, which was a lot to manage, the 8 characters also kind of leveled up, which was cool. They had like their own level up cards that made them more unique.
Yeah.
Distant Skies doesn't have that. There's only 5 characters. But but they have no specific level up, so you can kind of craft them in the way that you want to craft them.
Right.
So I don't think either one is like bad. It just depends on what you prefer.
Again, this feels more like it's a classic style board game, and the other one feels a little more role playing with their dedicated buffs for the characters.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we end up in situations where, boy, I could really use that item or that weapon because I'm sort of specialized in that area.
Right.
But I can't draw it because it's random.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of weird. It's like, oh yeah, if you're this character, you get +1 damage with the bat. It's like, well, I drew it. Why? Can I hand it to you? No. Why? Like, I almost feel like it would have been cooler if every player, like, if every character had their own combat deck.
Yeah.
For that specific reason.
And then a set of shared ones that get mixed in with it.
Yeah. Or it's like, oh, we unlocked this totem, or we got this coral sword. That's badass.
Yeah.
Here are the icons it needs. Who's the best? Oh, you're the strength person. Here's the sword. Kind of make it more like you're deck building your own special deck with your own character.
Yeah.
So that whenever the person's like, oh yeah, I have my bat, but it's in my deck. I didn't draw it, unfortunately. Versus, oh, you drew it. Why did you draw it? The shared combat deck was kind of weird. I do prefer it to the original combat system. But yeah, when you have specific items that are beneficial if only certain characters get it, that's just kind of odd to have in a shared deck.
And not being able to trade them, you're right.
Yeah.
That seems out of character for the type of game it is.
Right. I mean, because you also have so many skill cards that I also felt were relatively easy to just slot into your character.
Yeah, they got that way.
That you feel a bit overpowered by certain things. Now, granted, you only still have the 3 stamina tokens to use. And in the original, it was like, I have a pool of these whatever token. I don't remember what they're called.
Command?
Yeah, I have a pool of these so I can do whatever I want. Oh, no one else gets to do anything?
Yeah, that was a flaw.
It really was, and I definitely agree with removing that. Yeah. But it's like, okay, here's all the stuff I can do. However, I only have 3 stamina to do it all, so I can't do it all. That, I think, is a decent balancing system.
Yeah. I agree.
I don't know. Because I just finished doing my top 100. Oh. And Sleeping Gods was still at number 1. But I made the statement that it probably wouldn't be.
Okay.
Like, after having finished Distant Skies, the game that was sitting at number 2, I think I like more currently, because I was playing both at the same time. So it's like, would Sleeping Gods slip to number 2, after having played Distant Skies? Because when we originally finished, I was like 100%. Like I was so deflated by the end of our first campaign. I'm like, huh.
Yeah.
That sucks. And even
to be fair, we didn't kind of rush to the end intentionally.
I mean, we did, but it also
the game is designed to let you do that.
Exactly. There was no reason to just keep meandering about because, again, both games don't tell you how to get different endings.
Right.
So it's not like you're playing a video game and you're like, oh, I know what I need to do to get this particular ending, so I'm going to keep playing and doing all this extra stuff. Here, it's like, well, the game from the very beginning told us to get 5 totems. We got 5 totems. I don't see a reason to keep going except to keep going.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, well, I'd rather just end it.
And then the keep going is always going to be feeling like, are we just dragging this on for a reason?
Yeah. Unless maybe, theoretically, we could have kept playing and been like, you know what, let's finish out the Rebels stuff, and maybe that's an ending. I mean, if I had to guess, the Rebels an ending, the King is an ending.
Yeah.
Like, finishing out their quest lines.
Yeah.
Maybe getting all the passengers is an ending.
I'm trying to remember what it went through at the end to determine.
It was literally, do you have 5 totems or not?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was that particular section. So that was like main story. Hey, here's the main thing. So my guess would be, Rebels, King, maybe passengers, losing,
Yeah.
like being defeated or running out of time.
Yeah.
Like if you expend all your camps.
Or getting there without 5 totems.
Maybe. I almost feel like if you got there without 5 totems, it'd be like, go away! You can't do this.
Possible.
And that would be 5 out of the 6 endings.
Could be, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're just kind of like wandering around. And yeah, that's kind of where I was at, where it's like, let's just finish it because I don't see a reason to keep exploring, and we'll just do different stuff next time we play. Which again, there's a lot of stuff to still do.
Oh, yeah.
Like tons of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Just because I'm slightly disappointed by the way our first game ended doesn't mean that playing it again I would be like, it's just gonna be the same. You know?
Oh, no. Unfortunately, now we know like where the end point is. So
for ending 1. I would imagine that the other...
Yeah, the primary success
Yes.
ending. So
Yeah.
we know exactly where to go for every game from now on.
Right, and again, it could be circumstantial. Like, you make different decisions, you get different items, you get different totems, which then could make the game easier or harder for you. And the fact that you actually complete games, because I don't think the original had this, there's unlocked cards. So in art, we had 15 total achievements finished, meaning that we would start with quest card 212, 213, and 210, and adventure card 132 and 134. And that's persistent through all future games. And I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I like that stuff just to kind of... Because now, for each subsequent campaign, you have to continuously do better.
Right.
So, because I would imagine that that's just what you start with, but yet all of these other totems and endings and bosses and stuff don't carry over. The one thing I actually really did not like in this game, which I was just reminded, I hated the treasure maps. Where it's
Maps.
the treasure maps were like, go find this location
Oh, I'm sorry.
and roll, or not roll, but like flip until you get, and that's the item you found.
Right. So was it the going to those places, or was it the trying to get what you're getting?
It was just kind of both. Like, I mean, they felt super helpful at the very beginning when you weren't getting a lot of those special resources, but once you had a bunch, it was kind of like, I don't know, it's like, really, we're going to search and scour and be like, let's hope this is it. Oh, that matches, just to flip over these command things, and we got 14. Okay, that's the item we get. It made you go out of your way for what I felt like wasn't ever really something worth going out of your way for.
Yeah.
It's like, I'd rather just explore, finish quests, you know.
And come across those special items as a consequence of succeeding.
Correct.
In different areas.
Exactly.
I can see that. On the other hand, again, that goes back to the role-playing exploring versus the gaming. And the game is, I know what to do, I know what I need to do, I gotta roll the dice and try to get it done.
Right.
So, and that just feels like a different overall philosophy between the two.
Yeah.
That this is plays more like a straightforward board game, slightly, and Sleeping Gods plays more like a role-playing game, slightly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that defines kind of both games overall, which both philosophies are great.
Yeah.
It's, do you want to roleplay? No? Okay, here's Distant Skies.
Right.
And again, to be fair, I personally didn't like it, but that doesn't mean you have to do them.
That's
You
also true.
get them, and you can just set them off to the side.
Well, you probably have to get some of them. We didn't come across some of those items, and you need them for the totems to succeed.
No, not necessarily, because again, if you just happen across the most valuable one, you could substitute it for
Well, that's
lower
true.
ones.
That's true.
And that's why we were so like, we need these leaves.
Yes.
Like, we cannot find them. Oh wait, we have 15 of those diamonds.
That's true.
Well, let's just use those for everything.
Okay, that's true. Good point. Okay.
So I'm just like, they're there.
Yeah.
If you're, I mean, but that's, again, you can substitute. If you couldn't substitute, then yeah, the treasure maps would be really valuable. Where it's like, okay, we need to try and get, up to 12, because that's the item we need, which is what we were doing, which made it frustrating. But it's like, wait a minute. No, just overshoot it. Overshoot it and find the most useful item.
Find someone who'll give you 10 of those diamonds.
Yeah, I mean, granted, that was a quest line, and we just happened to, like, go to that cave. And I think that's, like, that can be cool. Like, if you thematically think about it, it's like, okay, well, we found these powerful demons that can eat things. We somehow convince them to not eat us.
Yeah.
So we just carry them. We're like, hey, here are these cave spiders. And they're like, oh, they ate the caves. We could have fought them, but so they ate them. Our reward was 2 of those ice diamonds. And then pushing forward, we found 2 more.
Yeah.
And it's like, these things just do 8 damage, and it's not considered an attack. Huh. Anyway, hey, what's up, gods? And we just like blew them up with these, diamond bombs.
Yeah.
So, of course, if you don't do that, or you don't come, because I don't remember where those demons were.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
And what it took to get to them. Because we had to get certain
It was.
cards.
I think it was also some insanely high check that we happened to pass. It's also some insanely high check to guess the password to the to the rebels.
Yeah.
So the fact that you still can do that, and again, what's fantastic about this game and the original is its sense of do what you want.
Yeah.
Like, even though this game tells you here's how you win,
Yeah.
essentially, that doesn't mean this is all you can do.
Yeah.
It's still, okay, boom, here you go. Fly around.
That's true.
And if you also don't like the way the flying mechanics work, they have a variant for that, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I think some people might use. I didn't like it, because I liked thematically that the plane was there, but you can, when you perform the fly action, you can clear off anywhere on the Atlas, not only on the landing space.
Oh, okay.
And you can perform the fly action without moving the plane to a different landing location. For example, you could move Claire to a space on the same open Atlas page. So it kind of give you a way to travel quicker.
Gotcha.
And you ignore obstacles and stuff. I feel like it's a way to, again, make the game easier if you're finding it difficult to travel and ignore obstacles, so you're constantly taking damage to get to the plane, to then fly the plane. It's just like, no, we can just fly from this spot over to this spot on the same map.
Yeah.
But thematically, I was like, well, no, we need the plane, so we need to go to where the plane's at. Granted, I would have liked... The only variant I think I'd take on that is that you can land the plane anywhere.
Yeah, I can see that. But then you have to keep track of where the plane is.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
But,
And also, you can't land planes anywhere. Like, they have to be able to come in. So it's like, hey, that's the clear spot, so that's where we're going to land.
mechanics versus theme, yeah.
Exactly. And for me, it's like, well, I feel like you lose a little bit of the sense of exploration whenever you just kind of are constantly just spawning in various locations. Like, oh, let's just go here. Well, we can do that. Let's just go there and do that.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Do you have any negatives? I mean, kind of on the game overall?
Can't think of any offhand. A question, which might be a negative, at least for you, but there's one other feature of this game that was not at all in the other one that I remember, and that's the wandering encounters, I think they're called.
Yes.
Okay. You want to bring that up at all?
I love those.
Okay.
I think they
just a way to accomplish a bunch of things all in one move.
Well, yeah, it also kind of gives a bigger depth to the world, because when you're going to visit a city, you're just not reading something off of a book and looking at a list of actions you can do. It's, hey, here's where we're actually at, and you can assign characters to do specific things instead of, well, we're all kind of as a group doing it.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought the wandering encounters were a huge enhancement to the storytelling. Yeah, actually, thanks for bringing that up, because I meant to, because that was another major difference. Besides the bosses that you could come across, it was the wandering encounters. And there's a ton. Like, there's a lot more than I thought.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we only hit like 3 or 4?
Yeah.
Maybe 5.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Maybe not even that much. I remember the forest. There's, I think, the cave, the city. I remember at least 3.
Yeah.
But even then, like, some of those are checks that you can't succeed at just because they're super difficult. Or they just, I don't know, I just thought that they allowed you to visualize kind of what everyone's doing and where you're at versus just kind of a icon on the map. So those were cool. So I guess the question is, where do you think he goes from here? You think he does a third Sleeping Gods? Because he announced this one pretty quickly, after the first one.
Okay.
Like, from what I remember, that I was actually very surprised, because there was an expansion to the original, which there was a few. There was one that was basically a new map and stuff, but also the dungeons.
Right.
This one came with the Thunderstorm Isle, which is basically an island you can go to.
Just another map page, kind of?
Pretty much just another map page, and I guess it gets added to the game, kind of like what the dungeons and other stuff did, where you could just happen to come across this. If I had to guess, Thunderstorm Isle is probably a distant location. Now that I understand, yep, they take the Thunderstorm distant location card and place it next to the flight board. Oh, hey, did you know you were supposed to put that into the... You may add this expansion to the game at the start of a campaign, or at any time after. So we could have been able to go to this at any time by flying to it.
Okay.
Oh, well, we did not. But that was added here. And he didn't add expansions to the first one later on. He just made a whole new game.
Right.
So, what do you think? You think he's done with Sleeping Gods, or do you think he does a third one and just kind of jumps forward in time?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if it would be a delay.
Yeah.
Just let the two of these sit out there for a while, let people play them a lot, let people get kind of like, okay, we've had enough of these. Mm-hmm. What else is there? And kind of beg him for the next
Please,
chapter.
A third one.
I could see that, or I could see it. It's hard to say, because something that is this creative, much more artistic mentality behind it than a production. Like, what can we crank out? What can we make money? What can we do differently? What can we do to appease people with complaints about these? Mm-hmm. This feels more like, if he feels inspired.
Yeah, no, I would agree, because he seems to, so there's another series that's a lot more mechanics first, story second, which is Above and Below, Near and Far, and Now or Never.
Played one of those.
Those have narrative elements to it, but they're the secondary to the actual game.
Right.
This is vice versa. It's very narrative forward. So I would actually expect him to do a third one to round out the trilogy, kind of like what he did with the first other. So it's like, hey, I have a trilogy of mechanisms and narration, and then a game of narration and mechanisms.
That would be a fun symmetry.
If I had to guess. So I'm curious. So this one the original has 8.2 out of 10 with 11,000 ratings. And Distant Skies has an 8.7. However, it only has 573. So significantly less ratings. Granted, this just came out last year versus the other one came out 3 years ago.
Right.
But I think that this would be more people's alley. Like, less barrier to entry. You're not just wandering around for the sake of wandering around.
Yeah.
And when you finish it, it's also a lot shorter. It felt a lot shorter. Like we were.
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be as long or longer, but
yeah. And with how many campaign games come out, it's like, oh man, here's one I can actually finish.
Or at least I know how to finish.
Or I know how to finish it, so it's not just kind of always there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
as a board game, I think all that makes more sense.
I agree.
And as a more of a role playing element, I don't think either of them are going to satisfy real role players.
And I mean, I'm kind of sitting in that former where I have so many campaign games that I back because they're my favorite games to play, but then they all come in at once and I'm overwhelmed and I want to record them all, but then it's like, well, I'm not going to get all of them played. So it was that was partially the reason why I was like, let's end it.
Yeah.
So I can get to another campaign.
Understood.
So I'm kind of in that situation where I was like, I was happy to finish it, but then I was kind of disappointed that I finished it. But then it's like, well, now I don't have to record it. I can just play it casually and not have the stress of a video coming out on a semi-regular pattern.
That's true.
So it's a weird situation to be in. It's definitely a first world problem. Oh no, I have too many games to play that I can't play them all.
Yeah. So go back to video games because those only take 12 or 15 hours each.
I have too many video games to play too. So because Above and Below was very, very basic. Like especially the storytelling was just like a blurb, and it was kind of like, here's resources.
It was an enhancement to the mechanics of the game.
Correct.
But it wasn't core.
Near and Far opened that up by having kind of a campaign element, which was basically play 10 games, but they introduced keywords that could come back later if you went out of your way to have the narrative element. But it was a lot more still mechanical. Now or Never was even more mechanics, with like a whole city building element to it, but also the campaign was with individual booklets that were
each had their own story.
You would play the character, and your character had specific sections depending on where you went and what chapter you were on. There were 6 chapters for Now or Never, so they got progressively more complex. And this one, it feels like that, okay, well, Sleeping Gods was very difficult. Distant Skies was kind of a little bit, in my opinion, too easy. So I would hope that if he does a third one, he kind of rounds it out, a little bit.
Okay.
But I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you're like, well, you can't know the ending, but you also can't not know the ending. There's no middle towards, like, we kind of know what to do. I guess you could. But then that just kind of leans into, well, we don't really know how to finish the campaign.
Yeah.
Versus just like, well, they kind of told us. I mean, because that's what these games do. Like, it's not just go out and explore. They give you quest cards that tell you, hey, up north is where you'll find the troll. Okay, well, let's go north. You don't know exactly where up north, but you know it's north.
Yep.
And that's my preferred way, instead of being like, quest marker, go to this page, go to... C3, and that's where the troll's at. It's like, oh, well, let's just ignore all the exploration and just say we went there. I don't know. But my guess would be he does a third one. Now, if he did more than that, I'd be very surprised.
Okay.
But he might not.
Yeah.
He might be like, I fucking hate making these games.
It's possible.
So, but with the... God, actually, now I'm also curious as to how much he made off of these games. So, Sleeping Gods.
It doesn't feel to me like the whole board game industry is as much profit-oriented as most other entertainment industries.
Tell that to Isaac Childress.
No, I know that there are some, and there's plenty of money to be made.
Yeah,
but
he's the exception.
But it feels like Ryan and designers are designing games to be played that they love.
Yes.
They think people will enjoy.
I would agree with that, because especially whenever you can meet them, like at conventions, like you definitely see the passion for it. But at the same time, I mean, if they could choose to make $10 million versus...
Well, now the companies that produce them...
which again is Ryan's company in this case.
Which is the overlap. But, like the big production companies, Pandasaurus and...
Yes.
AEG.
Like, Fantasy Fly and all them, Simon.
Their businesses making money.
That's true.
And they're being choosy about which games they back.
Correct. So the original Sleeping Gods made $1.1 million. Distant... That's
just on the Kickstarter?
That was on the Kickstarter,
okay.
Yeah. And then...
And so sales after that, or...
Yeah, that's just like, they're crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies. That was on GameFound. And that made 3.2. So, significant increase, and that's because of the popularity of the first one. Of course, the second one's going to make more.
Yeah.
I'd imagine the third one comes out, it's going to make more.
Well, I mean, not disappointed, so...
Yeah. So, I can't really think of any negatives. The things that I was just kind of bringing up, I feel like were more circumstantial with our case.
What about the packing up sessions? Difference between the two? Because we didn't film any of that, but...
No. This is way easier.
Okay.
There's less components.
Okay.
The original I felt like it had a lot, and you had more to manage that was kind of your own personal stuff.
Yeah.
And here, because of the shared adventure cards and the shared deck, you just kind of like put all those back up, put it up. It's like the only thing you kept as a player was like command cards in your hand.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then...
Yep.
So the event deck was different. That wasn't your timer either. So you just kind of put it up. So the setup and teardown was a lot easier in this one, but there's also less shit you had to set up and tear down.
Right.
Which again is, I mean, a benefit in my eyes.
Yeah.
Because setting up and tear down in the original, it was like, okay, how many command tokens did everyone have? Were any on the original?
Yeah, there was a
on
lot
the
that had
cards.
there was a lot that had to be written down. Everybody
Yeah.
had their own bag for their own individual stuff, but there
Right.
were some things that couldn't be shared that way.
Yeah. So it's, again, Distance Guys is more streamlined. I agree with you because they're not connected. I would say if you have to choose between one, get Distance Guys. Mm-hmm. But I would also say, yeah, if you
But they're
own,
different enough.
They are, yeah, definitely. I mean, have both. You're going to get a different experience because it's not like, I don't think this one replaces the original.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm never touching original Sleeping Gods again. Because I kind of like... It's like when you go back to an old video game, and you're like, oh my god, this is janky, but man, is it still great.
Yeah.
That's kind of how original Sleeping Gods would feel to me.
I'm still hoping I can find a port of one of my Commodore 64 games.
Yeah, and just reliving that of like, this is shit. But man, is it still amazing.
Oh, yeah. It takes you back to...
Like, yeah,
when
like...
I was 12 and really trying.
Yeah, just really just grinding at it. I mean, because I played like the original God of War recently, and I was like, "Oh my god, this fucking sucks," but I was having a great time compared to the new God of War games, which are masterpieces.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I'd feel going to the original. But on a scale of 1 to 10, what are you giving Sleeping Gods Distant Skies?
I really can't think of a reason to bring it down from a 10.
Right.
I can't see any problems, any flaws that would reduce it a point.
Yeah, I would, right? Because I was thinking, I'm like, maybe it is a 9. But then...
If you feel like it.
Well, no, because then as we kept talking about it, it felt like a lot of the... Like, our first game, or our first campaign... was basically, it felt like it was almost by design. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, this is, you got the main ending.
Yep.
Good. That was basically a guarantee.
Yep.
So now try and get the other 5. And circumstantial versus, like...
We might have just gotten very lucky several times.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and the only way to figure out if that's basically a pattern or just happenstance is to play it again.
7 more times.
So, yeah, exactly. 5 more times.
Okay.
To try and get all the endings.
Well, it's not going to happen perfectly, so it's going to be 7 or 8.
That's true. That is true. So, I mean, well, that's the other thing. Is like, this game is so open-ended that you can explore and do whatever you want, but eventually the game will end.
Yeah.
Like, you will run out of
timer.
You will run out of camps, or in the original, the events will run out. And then the game will end. Versus just, no, keep doing it. Keep playing until you get it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really don't think I can drop it because I do love these games so much that, yeah, I mean, I would just be happy to start a campaign if I didn't have 5 other campaigns to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I'm going to keep it at a 10 as well.
Good for you.
But that are our thoughts on Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies. Let us know what you think of the game in the comments below. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of my content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever I upload any new content. If you feel like supporting the channel, you can go ahead and click that Patreon link to be taken to my Patreon, and any help is truly appreciated. Other than that, stick around for any other run-throughs or reviews or cool top 10s or whatever I feel like putting on. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.